Paul Finebaum had an interesting take on WJOX in Birmingham recently when he was asked about which coach was likely to win the national championship who had not yet done so. I want to read what Paul had to say, and then I want to get into what he had to say about the Clemson-Georgia game, because that game has really captivated the attention of the college football world. Here's what Paul had to say about Kirby Smart and who would win the national championship next of coaches who are in college football who have not yet won it. He said, I think it's Kirby Smart. I think it's one of those three, talking about Ryan Day or Oklahoma's head coach Lincoln Riley, excuse me. I think it's one of those three. Kirby's got the best chance this year. By the way, not much over Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma. I think this is an Oklahoma team that finally is capable, but I see the same fate for Oklahoma as always. Kirby Smart has a really good chance. If you look at this, if you take out the the two meltdowns against Alabama, if you exercise out of the conversation, simply look at what Georgia has done, what Georgia has on its roster and the schedule, Georgia should easily be considered among the two or three favorites to win the national championship this year, especially when you look at the first game. I want to stop right here and make sure everybody sticks around at the end for Stuckey's Scoop. That's where I give you some scoop you're not going to see anywhere else. So make sure you're staying till the end so you get a lot of Stuckey's Scoop from our friends at Stuckey's who have really helped us this summer. If you don't know, Stuckey's is back. These pecan log rolls are legit. We are running out of them at our house, but we're going to continue to eat them. This is what Paul said right after that. He says, it's easy to predict 6 or 7 weeks out. But if I had to predict a game right now, he said it's not easy to predict a game 6 or 7 weeks out. But if I had to predict a game today, I'd pick Georgia to beat Clemson. And if that happens, we all know what's going to be happening the next Monday. Georgia will be the talk of the country. Well, first of all, I'm not so certain. That game, we've got a long way to go. And I wouldn't be so certain of a Georgia victory in that game. I wouldn't be so certain of a Georgia defeat. I think the problem with that game, of course, is it's the first game of the season. And there's been so much turnover, specifically at Clemson, that it's hard to know really what you're dealing with. I mean, they are right at a 3-point favorite. But I want to get to that in a second. I want to talk about what he's talking about first with which of the three are more likely to win it all this season. Lincoln, Riley, Ryan Day, or Kirby Smart. The problem here for Kirby is that he's playing in the SEC. Now, he may not play Alabama in the regular season, but he's going to have to play Alabama or whoever beat Alabama in the championship game. And if you don't win the championship game, you're not going to play for it if you're Georgia. Now, the Alabama has done that, but that's it. I mean, we've seen twice in the last 10 years that Alabama has played for a national championship without winning its own division. So it happens, and they won the national championship both those times. I'm not saying it's fair, it's just what it is. So, Georgia's not going to get that benefit. So Oklahoma doesn't have that problem. There's no one in Oklahoma's way. It's just like Clemson. There's no one in, Ohio State's way that I'm aware of. It's a better league than the ACC for sure. It's a better league than the Big 12. And for all the grief that Clemson gets for playing in the ACC, deservedly so, the Big 12 is not a lot better. I mean, it's better, but it's not a lot better. I mean, Iowa State certainly has proven that they are a quality program right now. But I mean, I think if you were Georgia and you said, "Hey, all you got to do is beat Iowa State to get to the playoff," they'd take that. So all things are not equal in these conferences. These conferences are not created equally. And the caveat with Clemson last year was that they had to beat Notre Dame. Not exactly impossible, but they had to beat Notre Dame, and they did. Iowa State's not Notre Dame. So, I just think if you're I hate to be so nuanced, but that's what this is that there is the complexity for Georgia is that they have a very difficult schedule every single year. Now they've added Clemson to that group. And they're going to be playing Clemson 3 times in the next 10 years or more, whatever it is, 4. So it's not getting easier. And but the real challenge in this league is the championship game. And, whether you're LSU and you got to beat Georgia, or you're Georgia and you got to beat Auburn, or you're Alabama and you got to beat Georgia, or vice versa, teams that belong in the playoff are playing in the SEC championship game almost always both teams. You don't want to make you want to dismiss Auburn for 2017. All right, fine. But after that, I'm not sure. I don't think Florida should have been in the playoff, but I think there are times when the playoff could have used a second SEC team. And it's not SEC bias. I mean, I really don't care. It's whatever. But Georgia's got to start beating Alabama. Well, Oklahoma's got to start being competitive in games in playoffs. So there's that. And Ohio State, I guess, too. Whatever. I mean, like you look at the games, and it's like Alabama is clearly the best program in the country. I don't think there's any confusion. Clemson ain't Alabama, but I think we need to start, these last few years of a 4-team playoff. We got to start taking the best 4 teams. We're taking the most deserving, and those not always the same thing. That's number one. Number two, this schedule for Georgia is tough. It's tougher than Oklahoma. It's tougher than Ohio State. It's certainly tougher than Clemson's dealing with, but it's totally manageable. Now, to Paul's, opinion that I'd pick Georgia right now to beat Clemson. Look, I'm going to talk about this a lot coming up. I just rewatched the Peach Bowl game, and if you want to be convinced that Georgia will lose to Clemson, watch the beginning of that Peach Bowl. It was not pretty. I mean, that was not a game that Georgia played well in. They won the game. I get that, and Cincinnati's defense is legit. Cincinnati's good. Okay. Then their defense is legit. But if you want to watch a game and be like, how could Georgia lose? What do you mean, how could Georgia lose? I mean, you just watch that game. I mean, they did not play well. JT Daniels was not crisp the way that I've seen. And there are issues there too. Now, that's just Georgia. All right? That's just looking at Georgia. Because the bowl games for both Georgia and Clemson were, as the way they played, unimpressive. Georgia's was impressive that they won. I don't know if there was a lot impressive about Clemson's bowl appearance at all. But that was, 7 months ago, and it may as well have been years ago. I mean, that's when everybody had masks on going outside. This is a long, long time ago. I don't want to know who you think can win or will win. I want to know why you think they will win. I want you to tell me why. Not just, I mean, we all understand what the ramifications for Georgia beating Clemson would be, which is they would beat Clemson. Doesn't get them into the playoff. For Clemson, if they beat Georgia, I think that gets them into the playoff. All right. So, but I want to know, why do you think that Georgia will beat them? I mean, what is the rationale? Because I can find a way for them to lose that game. I'm not overly negative necessarily. I'm not the Larry Munson stuff with Georgia is overblown. I'm just saying, there are problems there still. This is not an all-star team. They have issues. They have addressed some of those issues, but they have issues, Georgia. I'm not certain of any outcome in that first game, and frankly, there's not going to be anything that changes my thought on the outcome of that game until they actually play it. I don't know who's going to win that game. That's where I'm at right now with that game. It is too hard for me to legitimately have a take right now on who will win that game. They are both capable of winning it, and they both have issues. They both have issues for sure. Stuckey's scoop. Thank you for Stuckey's sticking around here. This is a pretty good scoop here from Matt DeBerry over on Dog Post. Ja'Cory Thomas committing to the Dogs on Friday the 25th of June. And when Matt talked to him, he asked, hey, why did you pick Georgia? And Corey says back, the biggest reason I picked Georgia was that I feel like it could be a second home, and that's a place my mom will be comfortable leaving her son at. I bonded with the coaches and players in a way that I felt I belonged there. That's the sort of stuff you used to hear. I remember quite frequently. You would hear from Mark Richt recruits. That's why they picked Georgia. Was they were comfortable there. This has been a wild month, and we are still preparing for what will be a wild run in June and July of recruiting. It's just so hard to know for sure what's coming next. But this should be a wild ride in June and July. But Georgia with that commit, and that was the reason why. That's your Stuckey Scoop for the day. Thanks for coming to Dog Post, watching. We'll see you over on the website.